Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I'm your host as usual, and obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 181 of the show. And before we get started, a bit of housekeeping real quick, because, well, you guys know what I like to do around here, and it only makes sense that we do it. So let's get on with the house cleaning. I do want to say thank you guys for coming back and listening to today's episode. It really does mean a lot to me. You guys constantly take time out of your days to download these episodes, to share these episodes, to constantly keep letting me know how you feel, whether you like my opinion or not. Granted, I don't really care if you like my opinion or not, because, well, it's my opinion. Well, everyone's allowed to have their own opinion, so, well, I just greatly appreciate you guys take time out of your days to, to listen to these episodes, to allow me to have a piece of your time, given that time is a very important thing. And, well, let's be real here. It's not guaranteed that you'll keep having it. So I do greatly appreciate that you guys allow me to have a portion of your time. I also want to say thank you to the Patreon backers, because, well, you guys keep supporting the show, and then you also get early access to the episodes. So, yay. Thank you guys for that. I really do appreciate it. And if you do want to become one, then you can just click the links down below and pick the tier that you want to pick. I also do want to say that obviously this episode, as you can clearly tell, does not have video. Again, it's mainly just given to the fact that, like, setting up the room is just a bit kind of annoying sometimes. So it's just easier for, especially this topic, not even just on me, but just in general, it just makes things a little bit easier to just focus on the conversation rather than like focusing on so much on the video aspect, if you get what I'm saying. Granted, either way, the podcast has always been an audio podcast, so what else can I really say? It started as an audio podcast, so it only makes sense that it would always keep going as an audio podcast. But anywho, now that we have that out of the way, let's get on with today's topic, given that it's not as serious as we did last week with Juan, which I highly recommend you guys go give that episode a listen if you haven't. It's a bit of a long one, about an hour-ish. But I do recommend you guys go give that episode a listen or a watch, depending on whichever one you prefer. But this week is a little bit more, I wouldn't say lighthearted, but it's just as interesting given the current state of how the smartphone market is set up, where we're going to be talking about the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro, and why, to me, it's very interesting. Here's what I'm getting at. We've always seen the narrative with the Pixel line of phones is that, it's just Google's attempt to try to compete in the Android space, even though they're like, let's be real, Google doesn't really make their money off these phones. So they don't really have to try so much. And yeah, I'm just being honest with you. I see where you're coming from when you say that, because let's be honest, Google makes a lot of their money as a search engine and a bunch of other stuff. They don't really make a ton of money off all their hardware sales, which would make sense why we've had some unappreciated devices like, the Pixel 3 and the 3 XL come straight to mind. The Pixel 4 and 4 XL, in those cases, I do think it was a bit unfair on how the media treated them. I don't think, especially given that year, that it was actually the first Android, well, not the first Android phone. Besides the LG G7, it was at least another Android phone that was willing to give iOS a run for their money when it came to Face ID, because let's be honest, a lot of companies, they, have Face ID on their phones, but it's not really a Face ID competitor that's as secure, because it's mainly just, it uses a selfie camera, scans takes a picture of your face and then moves on. It's not like an actual system designed to actually scan your face and everything to unlock the phone, which the only ones that were able to do that were the LG G7. The media bashed it because this is just a stupid gimmick. And then fast forward, the same thing with the Pixel 4. The media was like, who cares? And yes, let's be real here. When it comes to the Pixel phones, they're always known for their cameras. Like, prime example, when we started with the original Pixel, and then went on to the Pixel 2. those were arguably considered the best camera phones that came out during that time period, given that Google's software when it came to image processing was far and ahead compared to the competition. Even though the competition could say have better hardware, it still wasn't at the point where it needed to be in terms of actual software. And so that's why the Pixel lines excelled incredibly well. Now, I'm mainly referring to photos. We're not mainly talking about video here, because when it came to video, yes, just being honest here, the Pixels weren't the best. We're just being honest here. However, we look at the photo quality, and yes, the Pixel phones did incredibly well. And granted, as time has gone on, a lot of camera manufacturers have started to pump more money, not camera manufacturers, but smartphone manufacturers, specifically like Apple, Samsung, OnePlus, have started to pump more money into updating their software and updating their algorithms for their cameras to make them better. And so as time has gone on, the Pixel has always been, it's still better, but then it keeps going down. It's just better by a bit, or, you know, it's just a bit better. And then you go over, like, once we had, like, say, the Pixel 4, and I'd say specifically the Pixel 5, once we got to that point, the competition caught up, and it became very difficult to determine if really the Pixel line was the best camera phone. Like, prime example, when the iPhone 11 Pro came out, a lot of people had deemed that the best camera phone on the market, given that it could do great video and great photos. And I could see where they're coming from. I personally think the iPhone 11 Pro was an incredible phone. It was personally one of my favorite iPhones they've made in a long time, because let's be honest, the 12 Pro, besides being flat display and everything, and, you know, adding the new camera sensor and everything, the 1-inch sensor, when we take a look at it, it's basically the same thing as the 11 Pro. It's just, it's got 5G and a flat screen, and, you know, not the, you know, the squared off edges and everything. However, things are a little bit different this year. Now we look at the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro, and we see all of this, and we're like, okay, maybe Google has finally changed their tone and their attitude towards how they want to view the smartphone market and how they want to approach it, given that Google has always been, based on what we heard, that Google's original plan was to focus on mid-range phones, to compete in the mid-range space, and to provide great value smartphones for, you know, mid-range prices. That's why we had the Pixel 4a, the Pixel 4a 5G, and the Pixel 5. I still agree that the Pixel 5 was one of the better phones you could buy in 2020, even though, let's be real, like, all the camera nerds, or specifically the phone nerds or the tech enthusiasts, were like, oh, it doesn't have flagship level specs, but it's not a flagship. And I'm like, well, this is where we have to redefine what we call a flagship, because a flagship doesn't mean that it's supposed to have the best of the best. A flagship, by definition, is the best that a manufacturer can offer in terms of a user experience and what it offers to the user. Yes, the Pixel 5 didn't have the top of the line chipset. It didn't have, you know, the Snapdragon 875. It had the Snapdragon 765. It didn't have the most RAM. It had 8 gigs of RAM instead of 12 or 16. It didn't have the biggest battery. But in terms of the overall package of the phone, it was still one of my favorite phones I've owned in a very long time. Even though I still will tell people, to me, one of my all-time favorite Android phones of all time is the Pixel 2 XL and the OnePlus 7 Pro. Both of those phones were my absolute favorite, given what I got out of them and how long I've had them for. Now, we look at the Pixel 6 and we see, okay, here's where Google's at. Google is clearly trying to take a more serious approach, and we've also, you know, have some pictures up, like basically the backdrop of the whole conversation is from John Prosser a long time ago, from 3 months, when he published the leaks, his original leaks of the Pixel 6, which ended up getting confirmed by Google, which, you know, at this point, they're like, yeah, we know it's coming. We know how it looks like. Google went on their website, updated everything. They're like, okay, here's the Pixel 6, here's the 6 Pro, you know, it's coming. We're going to do our launch event. But when you look at everything that Google is doing, you can tell that they're taking this more seriously, and they're just not throwing this out there just to, like, you know, throw their hat in the bucket, per se. Or I would say, like, throw their own coin in the bucket. I keep forgetting how that saying goes, but we'll just keep going with it. We look at all this and we're like, okay, Google's making their own processor now. They're trying to compete with Apple and Samsung, where Samsung makes the Exynos chips. Apple makes the A-series chips. And now Google announced that they're making their own chips called the Tensor Chips. That now this will be able to bring a more Google-like experience to the Pixel phones, where now obviously a lot of the automated software features that come with the Pixel line will now run on the device. And for a lot of people, they really like what they hear. It definitely sounds like it was going to be it sounds like it's going to be a great phone based on everything we've heard so far, based on the specs. We know it's going to have obviously it's going to have the Tensor Chips, going to have a great amount of RAM, good battery sizes. The camera array is definitely the first time we've seen an upgrade in the Pixel camera array for a very long time, because we've always been stuck with this 12 megapixel main sensor that Google's like, okay, we don't need to update it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And yeah, I get it that Google, in terms of hardware, didn't really want to focus on that. They're like, oh, we don't really care if we don't have the best hardware. As long as our software is so ahead, then it will just be perfectly fine. But I do believe that the balance in all of that is not just software. It needs to have both. You have to have good camera hardware and also good camera software. And so it does seem like, given where the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro are being presented, specifically the 6 Pro, yes, this is going to be the big flagship that Google, or a lot of people that love the Google line of phones, are going to be the most excited for, because this is the true flagship that Google will present. Like, okay, they're like, okay, this is the best of the best that we can make. Has our best cameras, has our best processor, has our best amount of RAM, best storage, best battery, best display. Like, they're going to try to do everything they can. Now, we can't really talk about the phone's experience, given that we don't actually have the phone and it doesn't come out until October. So we're probably like 2 months away from it to begin with. Do I think there's YouTubers that already have the phone right now? Yes, let's just be real here. There's probably a good amount of YouTubers that already have it under wraps and they just signed an NDA, so obviously can't disclose anything until the day of. But it's going to be interesting given what we're dealing with this year in terms of the smartphone space. Like we talked about last week with Apple and the privacy policy, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people switch over to Android if Apple decides to go through with their privacy changes, like with the whole thing going with the CM7 scanning and stuff like that. And the whole that people don't really trust big tech, which, do I blame them? No, I don't think that big tech will make the right decision for everybody. Let's just be real here, like just being genuinely honest. But with Pixel's offering, or specifically with Google's offering with the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, what we can see, it looks promising. Now, there's one big red herring in this entire situation. I think we can all agree, we know what the red herring is, and that's the Tensor chip. We don't know how this thing is going to run. We don't have performance benchmarks. We don't know what this thing is specifically going to enable in the Pixel line, even though, yes, Google can allude to some things, but in terms of what actual changes will come to the experience of using a Pixel phone because of the Tensor chip and how it's going to perform with, thermals, how is it going to perform with battery life, how is it going to perform with overall performance, and dealing with the whole issues that modern Android phones are dealing with right now with the Snapdragon 888, where they have to essentially thermal throttle it so that the phone doesn't melt in your hands or melt in your pockets, because let's be real, that's a normal thing that happens with electronics. Electronics will generate heat, and they'll generate a ton of it. So you have to keep it under wraps and keep it cool and keep the thermal profile very, manageable, to say the least. So to me, it is going to be interesting to see how Google is going to approach this situation, given that they know the Snapdragon 888 has a pretty bad reputation, given the fact that, yeah, it runs hot. And a lot of companies, in order to manage this, had to thermal throttle the processor, and a lot of people weren't happy about that. Like, it's a whole big debate with the OnePlus 9 Pro, where some people are not really happy about that. Actually, it is the 9 Pro. Yeah, it is. Where this is where we're at, where a lot of people just aren't happy with it. And I'm going to be interested to see what Google does in this matter. Now, I get it. Some people are like, oh, Josh is just trying to defend Google. He's trying to be the Google Knights and everything. I'm like, okay, first off, I ain't loyal to any brand, guys. Like, let's just keep it real here. I'm going to call it how it is. And if a company does something good, I'm going to be like, okay, they're doing something good. We should applaud them for that. Like, same thing with Apple. We criticize Apple for their poor decision making when it came to thinking that it was a bright idea to make this whole privacy thing and try to mask it with, oh, we're trying to protect the children, man. Like, okay, that's great. Everybody wants to protect children, but you're trying to mask it. You're trying to mask something that is severely a terrible idea, and it's going to be executed poorly. and you're trying to mask it with something that's very noble, very righteous, like an actual good thing that we should all strive for as a society. Google, in this case, they're like, look, bro, we're just trying to make a good phone so that everyone can just shut up. Do I blame them? No, because people have been wanting Google to make a great phone, even though I still agree the Pixel 5 in 2020 probably was the most underrated phone of the year. A lot of people dogged on it because that was the year that the S20 Ultra came out, and people were like, oh, the S20 Ultra, besides all the camera stuff, was pretty great phone, bro. Or yeah, the iPhone 12s. And it's like, well, here we are. We have this year of incredible smartphones. We have this. It's going to be very interesting given the year that we're in right now. The Pixel line looks very promising. It looks very enticing, especially now that we have the Pixel 5a 5G is about to launch soon. So it's going to be very interesting seeing how this all wraps together. Samsung right now, they just announced the Galaxy Z Flip 3 and the Z Fold 3. And I'm like, okay, folding phones are still a gimmick. I get it. Some people are going to be like, Josh, how can you say that? Folding phones are not a gimmick. They're the future. And I'm like, bro, they're not the future. These things are still, like, I get it. They can try to argue that this thing is as durable as a normal phone. I'm sorry, bro. Glass does not bend whether you try to fight it or you don't. Like, glass doesn't bend. It's basic physics and chemistry composition, my G. You can try to argue it as much as you want. The science will say otherwise, and you're gonna look, not being mean, you're gonna look pretty dumb when you try to argue it. I don't like the idea of folding phones being the future because phones aren't really boring. It's just your needs and what you use them for has changed. That's just the reality of it. Like, it's where we're at right now, where some people probably try asking me, Josh, do you think I should wait for the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, or do you think I should just get a new phone right now? And I'm like, I don't know. Has your needs changed? That's the question you really have to ask yourself, especially when we're talking about smartphones, is has your need changed in regards to how you use your smartphone? Because if you get a new smartphone, are you going to do anything differently, or are you just going to keep doing the same stuff that you used to do just on a newer phone, which at that point, I'm not saying how to use your money, but you kind of wasted your money at that point because there was no reason to upgrade. It'd be different if you were, say, like, oh, I have an iPhone 7 and I want to maybe take photography and videography a little bit more serious with my smartphone. I would like a better phone that can do this stuff. That'd be a different story to say, hey, I'm going to go out and buy an iPhone 12 Pro Max because I know I'm going to get great photos out of it. I know I'm going to get video out of it. Or if you're on the Android side, like, hey, I want to go buy an S21 Ultra because I know I can get great photos and great video out of it. Or maybe I want to go get a Pixel 5 and see what it was like to use the Pixel 5. Or maybe I want to go out and use an LG, V90 or what? Well, not V. I say V90. I'm like, that doesn't exist. Actually, does it? That's a wonderful question. But you get my point, is we live in a day and age where you really have to ask yourself, is it really worth upgrading? Now, I get it. There's some people that have held on to their Pixel 2 XLs. There's people that have held on to their Pixel 3 XLs. There's some people that, still have Pixel 4s. There's people that have, like, if you have a Pixel 5, I really don't see a reason for you to upgrade besides, like, unless, like, the performance jump is so massive and it's just a better overall user experience, then yeah, I can see why you would want to upgrade. Like, I'm not going to pretend like it would be stupid, because it's like, if I was in that position where I'm like, hey, we finally see how the Tensor chip actually performs. It performs incredibly well. It manages heat very well. It has great battery life, and the phone overall is benefited because of this custom silicon, where now we're having a better user experience. Then yeah, I would say go all in, bro. Just buy the phone that's a better fit for you, because I get it. Not everyone likes the sizing of these phones. They're like, oh, I remember when smartphones used to be tiny and they used to be like 4 inches and stuff. And I'm like, bro, get over it. Technology evolves over time. Like, there's physically no way to have a modern smartphone less than 5.4 inches. It physically is almost impossible given the constraints with battery life, given the constraints with thermal performance. You can try to argue it as much as you want, but trying to cram that many powerful components inside of a small chassis is a terrible idea. There's a reason why the iPhone 12 mini didn't really do well, and so, there's many reasons that can go into that. Let's be real. There's so many reasons. But we look at where we're at right now, and it's like, I think 5.4 inches or 5.8 is the comfortable average size that a lot of people enjoy having their iPhones at. I get it. The iPhone 11 and 12 both start at 6.1 inches, We have a lot of other modern Android phones starting at 6.1 inches or maybe 6.3. And obviously the big flagships go up to like 6.8, 6.7, maybe 7 inches, depending on what we're dealing with here. But you catch my drift where I'm getting at. And to me, this just seems like a very great time, given that Google is finally taking this market seriously. And that's what I'm interested to see is they're talking about spending so much money on marketing. They're talking so much about, oh, this phone is truly a flagship, that we literally gave it the best of the best. And it's going to be interesting to see how Google approaches a lot of these concerns. And it'll also be interesting to see how the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro perform when people actually get in their hands and they're like, okay, this is a final like copy of the phone, a final like non-review edition. Like this is straight up a final like ready to ship version of the phone. Because let's be honest, people don't realize that I personally hate first impression videos on smartphones because it doesn't make sense to review it when it comes out, because you don't know the phone. You haven't been using it for a long enough period of time. I would say for a smartphone review, you should probably wait at least 3 to 6 months until you even publish your first review. Like, I get it. Just make sure that, like, there's people that do impressions, because let's be real, people like first impressions. They like watching these people like, okay, this is the first impression that this person got from using the phone, and I want to go try it out and see what are my first impressions. Because if, maybe the reviewer didn't really like his first impressions or her first impressions, but you ended up liking yours, then I don't see the problem in the matter. You get what I'm saying? But this is where we're at right now in terms of everything. We don't really know much more, and we just really have to just wait until the event to see really how this thing is going to perform, because that's the main concern that a lot of people have, is how is this thing going to perform in comparison to the competition, which the competition is already coming fast. And it's only a matter of time before the new iPhones come out this year. And then we have to deal with the whole big controversy of like, what should I buy? A new Samsung, maybe a new Pixel, maybe a new iPhone. That's where we're at right now. But I do thank you guys for allowing me to have a piece of your day and just talk to you and just really share what's on my mind about this, because I've had this on my mind for a while now, and I've just wanted someone to really talk to and express how I feel about it. But I really appreciate you guys have allowed me to have a piece of your time. I really, really do appreciate it. Please continue to be safe out there, guys. I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful week. And as always, guys, please don't do anything dumb. Continue to be mindful and respectful of those around you, because the world is still a weird place. And the best thing we really can do is just continue to be mindful, continue to be respectful of those around us, and just continue to love on everyone and just do the best that we can every day. But until next time, guys, I will see you next week, and have yourselves a wonderful and blessed week. Bye, guys.
Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.